or indirectly any money or any valuable thing.
That I will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly
Any money or other valuable thing.
any money or other valuable things
I shouldn't use the punctuation where it is. For the performance or non-performance of any act
for the performance or non-performance of any act
or duty pertaining to my office,
or duty pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear
I further swear
that I will faithfully discharge my duties
that I will faithfully discharge my duties
as a member of the State Board of Career and Technology Education
as a member of the State Board of Career and Technology Information
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Awesome.
All right, let's do what? Let's do what? Everybody hands up. Brent, you face them without looking at the script, and you have your right hand up? No?
Sure.
All right. Just look at them. You guys look at Brent, and on three, we'll just do one. 1, 2, 3. All right, we're good.
Good. Thanks. Appreciate it. It'll be all over social media.
I said,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
down
right, I
to
guess we can get
business.
started now.
You're official.
Welcome
I
again.
feel official.
Yeah.
Board members, before we start our meeting,
Okay, I believe we have a quorum, so if we could have a call to order, Ms. Jones, roll call.
Michael Brown, he's absent today. Peter Dillingham.
Here.
Randy Gilbert. Here. Shaylin Hanning. Here. Edward Hillary.
Here.
Suzanne Reynolds. Here. Rob Seaman.
Here.
Kendra Wesson. Here. Superintendent Walters.
Here. Okay, so we do have a quorum here, so next is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You guys would do the Oklahoma salute with me?
I salute the flag of the state of Oklahoma. Its symbols of peace unite all people.
If you guys would, I'll take a moment of silence if anyone wishes to pray or sit silently for a moment. Thank you very much. That's item 2. Before we get into opening comments, Ms. Jones, was the agenda published in accordance with the Open Records Act? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome. We have 2 new board members today, and having Board Member Seaman redo his, or do another oath there. It's great to have the board meeting together, and I know we'll get to know each other here as time goes on. I want to make sure that everyone's introduced to the new board members. You know, I've got a great, it's always interesting, you know, in the summertime outside of the regular school year, getting to talk to folks and getting to kind of, you know, it's a little more flexible in meeting with administrators, things around the state. They don't have school going on. And I got to meet with some folks from Guyman, and we were talking a lot about CareerTech options and the lack thereof out in, you know, the far panhandle. And there's some interesting kind of things that I would love for us to look at in the future about how to get services out there to them. They're not in a CareerTech district. A lot of that is local decisions and so forth, but I'd love for us to look at options there. But it was a great conversation to highlight around ensuring access. And we had a lot of great conversations, and I know that the director and I talk about this often, is getting to travel around the state and talk to the career techs. and the efforts that they're making to ensure that their highly successful programs have enough space for students to continue to go in. And this is something that we're going to continue to make efforts to. We've talked a lot about this when it comes to the funding of the CareerTech model. We talk about the options that are given in the CareerTech model. We talk about the local flexibility. And it's something that I think is just of the highest importance, is to ensure, for example, if a child in a local community wants to get a welding certificate, they have the ability, they have the opening, they have the accessibility to the programs that are being offered. And I think that our CareerTech system has done an incredible job of keeping that flexibility and being agile enough to meet those needs of those local communities. And it's a task I think we always have to take seriously. We always need to look at ourselves and make sure that we are being accountable to all the students and all the parents and ensuring that that access is there. But I think it is a tremendous example of the CareerTech education that students get, that we hear this all the time from parents of they want to be in these programs. There's waiting lists in some of these programs. And again, we're going to continue to make sure that all students have the availability to get into these programs. But it's great to have that kind of demand. It's great to see that kind of respect around the state. And it says a lot about the programs CareerTech's offer, that it's universally viewed by parents as these are programs we want our young people in. So again, I wanted to just bring that up as I think as we continue to move forward and we continue to look to ways to improve our CareerTech system. A lot of those could center around accessibility and making sure that all students have access to the programs that especially are in our workforce needs for the state. So those are my comments. I will turn it over to Director Haken for his comments and introduction.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'll be pretty brief. But one thing before we get started on other comments, I want to recognize Glenn. Glenn is over 30 years with serving CareerTech as an appointment from the AG's office. Will be retiring this summer. So we are very honored to, to have worked with him and know the knowledge that he has. And so hopefully I can still get a hold of him when he retires so that I can ask some questions about what's going on. So we are just excited that he's getting an opportunity to change phases in life, but more excited that the CareerTech system got to benefit from having Glenn Hammonds with us.
Can we take a vote and not let him retire? Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. Just a few other things that I'll mention. Along the lines of what the superintendent's talking about, we have seen an increased interest in CareerTech programs. So this year, I've talked to you about Thomas already that voted in to the Chisholm Trail Technology District, and Justin can talk more about these because he's led the effort with annexations. But we had 2 school districts recently have a vote, actually on Tuesday, to decide whether they wanted to be a part of a tech center district or not. And actually, there were portions of the school district because when they came in, they had came by county and not by school district. So Rattan voted to become a part of Kiamichi's district, so that is exciting that locally they decided that. Coleman School District decided not to be a part based on the local vote. So that just shows more evidence of how we are locally controlled and they locally can decide if they want to be a part of that or not. But it's great that people are interested and school boards are wanting to be a part of that. We've had several discussions with other entities that we aren't to a vote yet, but are moving that directions, whether they be county commissioners to vote as a county or school boards, and many of them are in the Panhandle. So that's exciting that they're wanting to be a part of technology center districts, but regardless of that, they can still get served through the K-12 programs that we have. So a few other things that I would mention is recently the Chancellor and I have been working with the Department of Commerce to have meetings with our incoming businesses, Canoe, Enel, Southern Rock, and most of those CEOs have already set up meetings with us so we can talk about how our state serves those people and what we can do to make sure that they have the service that they need. So that's pretty exciting to be working together on systems that might support businesses coming in. Aircraft maintenance continues to grow. And so we've had several meetings recently about how do we provide what they need as they grow. And so that's an exciting time right now, talking about the curriculum that's available. What does governance look like from the FAA, and how do we make sure that we're doing the right things so that people can get into jobs, and at what age do they qualify for those? So a lot of exciting things. Our CTSO group, which is our student organizations, just did their CTU, which is their training for the summer, where they all come together, whether it's FFA, DECA, skills, all those officers come together at one time, get trained in what leadership looks like and how do we lead the next generation of students. So that was a big thing for the summer, and our people put a lot of work into that. The other big things that are going on, you're going to hear on the business part of the agenda, but that's just some of what's happening. We are working over the summer, now that school gets out, and session is out is the bigger thing. We can focus on agency operations and how are we serving people and how do we strengthen. One of the great things, and Lisa's going to talk about the budget, is an increased budget to CareerTech. So how do we make the most of every dollar and how do we support that growth? So as we bring, the biggest concern that I have for our K-12 programs is new teachers and so many that don't have experience within the CareerTech system. So how do we get them trained? And how do we supervise them? So we're going to put a lot of effort this year into our program specialists and how do they follow up with these people and make sure that they're supported. So the budget will, Lisa will go through that with us, but I wanted you to know there's a lot of emphasis right now on how do we structure our agency so that we support the field the best. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we'll get into the meeting.
Thank you, Director. So we've got the minutes from May 18th, regular board meeting. Is there any discussion around that, or do we have any motion to approve the board minutes?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Do you mind calling roll, Ms. Jones?
Ms. Wesson?
Aye.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
I'm going to abstain because I was not part of the board.
Okay.
But- okay.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes.
Thank you.
Minutes have been approved. We've got a section here on the agenda for recognitions and presentations. At the time of the agenda, we did not have any. I didn't know, Director, if that, so we don't have anything there. So next we have a management information update from Dr. Lockwood.
Our state staff, for those board members who are new, state staff simply refers to a meeting that we at the agency have. We house about 160-ish of our employees in Stillwater. The remainder are housed throughout the state at different locations. Twice a year, we bring all of those employees together for meetings. We have one in June and one in December. This is the update on what we just did this last week. Recognized new employees. I will not read the names to you. You take on them. As you can see, they're pretty well across every division throughout the agency. My new chief of staff, and the worst picture they could take of a man they have right now. Years of service, we're quite proud of our years of the service awards. 5 years with the agency. Next slide. 5 years with the state of Oklahoma, because we have some employees who work with other agencies within the state, so we recognize their service with the state of Oklahoma and ours. And then goes to 10 years with CareerTech. State of Oklahoma, 15 years. 15 years. 20 years. 25 years. 30 years. And yes, we have an employee who's been with us for 35 years, so impressive group of employees. Dr. Easton from Meridian Technology Center was our keynote speaker, did a great presentation, used Wizard of Oz as the basis, and having hard, following your dreams, and several pieces like that for our employees, so we thought she did an outstanding job, and she's one of us, even though she's not a state employee, she's a CareerTech employee, so she did an outstanding job, and we were very happy to have her speak. We then, our Employees Association, which is a member-driven association of our state employees, hosted a lunch for us. Retirees actually come and cook that lunch for the employees, so that's neat to see those folks come back. There was a video that played, and I don't think we have that video for you. I'll see when the next slide comes up. I don't think that video is embedded, because we have a day where employees can bring their kids to work, and they do an interview with the kids, and it's hilarious when they ask them what their mother or father does and things like that. And Mr. Haken's child, when they asked what his favorite word was, and the child said no. And most of the employees kind of laughed and like, yeah, we understand. The organization plan, I don't think we have a copy of that plan embedded in this PowerPoint either. I think it was a separate PowerPoint. Mr. Haken spoke of his vision and where we're going with the agency and what some of our plans are, and the board will be made aware of that as time goes on. Above and beyond awards, once again, I think that PowerPoint is not embedded in this, is it? And so it's not the name.
No, it's just slides.
Yeah, it's just a slide, and we can click through these because we gave employees, there it is. Craig Mell, longtime employee, is manager of the Resource Center, and he's been a long time employee, 30 plus years, and but he received the Above and Beyond Award for some of his work that he's done with us. Next slide. Leadership and Achieving Excellence Award. Next slide. Mary Jane Grayson, Program Specialist, has done a good job, and that's received her award for her work in her division. Excellence in Customer Service Award, which is a key focus for our whole agency. We try to be customer service driven. Next slide, please. Micah Hickman works in our IMD, Information Management Division, governs CTEMs, and has to deal with a lot of people that are unhappy when they're inputting data into our system. And she's one of the first people that gets to make contact with them, and she's always smiling and always very pleasant. And I think she does a good job of calming people down when they're very unhappy. So she does a good job with that. Innovation Award. Mark Birch, Program Manager in BMI, had done some outstanding work in developing a system. We track when our teachers from throughout the state come to Summit. There used to be a form that literally they would fill out and somebody would sign that they were at state Summit, and it was a quite cumbersome task, and he developed a process where it's a little more electronic and a little easier to manage, so he did a great job with that. The Team Award. Team Award was the group that facilitates Teaching to Lead, which is a program that we put on for our teachers in the field to help them become better teachers. And that team is a cross-section. People from multiple divisions served on that team, both PD and other divisions as well. So very happy with the work they've done. Retirees, as Mr. Haken spoke, Lynn's one of 5 that are retiring, and once again, those folks are from throughout the agency, and all will be missed. All have been long-time employees, very long-term employees. Any questions about state staff? I know it's a very quick run-through on it, but just to let you know what it was.
Just I would mention that the purpose of state staff is not only to give information to all of our employees at one time, so make sure it's consistent, but recognize employees for the work that they do. So all those awards are nominated from within the agency, and it's peers recognizing the way that they go above and beyond, or that they provide that service. So it's pretty exciting for us to celebrate within the people that really make a difference in the agency and to the field across the state. So that's kind of the purpose of state staff. And anytime that we have that, twice a year, you guys are more than welcome to come. Do you have any questions for Justin?
Thank you, Justin.
Appreciate that update, Dr. Lockwood. Next, we've got some management action items. So it looks like next up we have Ms. Ventris on a vote on distance education at Northeast Technology Center.
Good morning. There we go. So for our new board members, this board has been recognized by the U.S. Department of Education to accredit our technology centers. And so the accreditation division carries out those duties along with people from the field. And we have an expansion of scope to include The regular accreditation is institutional, and we have an expansion of scope to include distance education because it's fairly new to our system. And so we have to go out and examine the programs that want to offer a percentage of distance education. We bring that back to you, and those need to be accredited. After they're accredited, then they become part of the 5-year institutional accreditation, unless there is change made to those programs in which the school would notify us, and then we would go back out and look at that again. So there are standards in our guidelines that you all have approved for distance education, and they include program integrity, resources and technology, learning development and instruction, skill attainment and assessment, student services and support services, marketing and recruitment, student engagement, satisfaction, and program effectiveness and improvement. We take program specialists from the agency as well as accreditation staff to the schools to do the examination. We talk with administrators and staff. We view a demonstration of the format that they're going to use for distance education, and then we observe the program area. Again, due to DE being fairly new for many of our technology centers, full-time programs, agency staff will follow up mid-year in January. We try for January. We'll follow up to provide technical assistance if needed, and we want to confirm that there is satisfactory attendance tracking, clock hour monitoring, verification that it's the same student that's logged in that's doing the work, and DE program quality, and that includes all of our full-time program requirements. If there are any changes or things that are a concern, then we will bring that information back to the board after that mid-year follow-up. If you approve distance education, then the program again becomes part of their full-time institutional accreditation that we do every 5 years. So on May 16th, the Accreditation Division and some program specialists went to Northeast Technology Center in Pryor to view how they're going to do, again, it's just a portion of their lineman program via distance education, and that report was provided in your packets. And we do recommend the board grant full accreditation status to that program. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them, and Mr. Crutchfield, the superintendent, and some of his staff that have been working on this are also here for questions. Yes?
So on the rating summary for Sandra McKnight, it looks like it's incomplete.
Okay, so Sandra is our financial aid specialist, and so she's only looking at certain areas that affect financial aid and the ability to receive Pell. So that's why. It is complete, that's just her portion, yes.
I just wanted to say that I know a lot of work goes into these accreditations and a lot goes into preparing for the accreditations. And thank you all for that hard work. I don't want you to think our silence isn't dictating that appreciation for all the hard work.
I know I'm new, and this is probably well-known to everyone here, but just for me, since we're taking action on it today, is there a rubric for the instructors or teachers that are on, or is it part of whoever's like on the staff is?
Yes, they receive our guidelines, and you guys will all receive training actually in September on all of this too, but they use our guidelines as an application that the rubric is very similar to what our staff uses when they go out to do the examination.
Okay.
So they're answering the same questions that our examiners are scoring.
Is it different? Is there anything additional for the distance education portion of that?
I would
For the
say it's not
instructors?
additional, it's just separate and a little bit different.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it's specific?
It's
for
specific to distance education,
All right.
that the U.S. Department of Education has approved what we do for that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So is this the only program they're doing with distance learning
Mhm. Yes, in a full-time program.
Roger, would you be interested in talking a little bit about your program or the accreditation process or any of that? Sorry, Jessica.
No, thank you.
Do I need to hold it? Oh, it's live. All right. Again, I'm Roger Crutchfield, Superintendent at Northeast Tech. We're the 5 counties northeast of Tulsa. We have our Pryor campus, and I'm really here in support of my instructor. We were approached 4 years ago to put in place an electrical lineman program from GRDA, local electric co-ops, municipalities. They needed linemen. We're like, sure, what does that take? We're thinking maybe a short-term class or something, and then we look into the curriculum and find that's a 1,500-hour class. We need like 12 months to get that in place. And we've hired Jeff, we hired him from Veneta, and then COVID hit. We hired him the week before spring break, and we never returned to school. And so we're like, okay, we're going to start a new program under COVID, and we adopted a hybrid model there where we quickly instituted I've got our instructional services folks here, tasked them with teaching our teachers how to teach career tech in a somewhat quasi-distance role, which is counterintuitive for technical training. But that being said, Jeff Floyd, our instructor, really gravitated to it, the theory base, and that's what we're looking to include in this. It's that theory component that we can do remotely, and it frees him up a little bit too, because part of the curriculum is an internship that they have to go out and about, and so it allows him not only to seek professional development in that process, but also to monitor and work very, very closely with his advisory committee from the area. It covers 5 counties. We have it at Pryor, but we have students from all over the 5 counties, plus even outside of our district that come to that. So it's a fantastic program. I applaud him. It was his idea. He said, I just think that this would be great for me. And so we put our folks together and helped him fill out an application that is not single-page form. But we got that filled out. The agency folks have been great in that process too. But I would also answer any questions you might have for me. Oh, no. This is approving like 9% online for some theory of a 1,500-hour course. No, we have a pole yard out there. We're in the middle of constructing him a $3.3 million building right now. We got dirt moving right now for a new building. No, absolutely not. Those guys are climbing poles. Come out if you want. Agency folks, I think Jessica's been up a pole maybe. But we have a pole yard out there, and just great support from the community, because this really is a need. OSU IT had a program, but those guys can make $200,000 a year, and so they're flying out to California and dealing with all that. But locally, we were really needing a workforce, and it really is the beauty of Career Tech, and that you're responding to that local need. They come to us, and we're like, yeah, we need folks in that area, and it's good-paying jobs. But it's very much a hands-on program, very much.
That'll be a wonderful program, though, and there has to be a huge need for that, certainly in the state of Oklahoma. But
there really is, and it was fun for us to be kind of a trendsetter, because we were the very first Career Tech with an electrical lineman. And Jeff, you can answer this now. How many are there now? 7 of them. Because other municipalities and co-ops heard of it, and GRDA, and they approached their superintendents like, hey, Northeast is doing this. So we've actually hosted, other technology centers have come up and taken what we've done, and we've worked collaboratively across the state. To the superintendent's point earlier, trying to provide access as best we can. They all can't come to Pryor to take this. So it's best if they can deliver it and customize it to their needs at their local communities. And then Jeff put together, they do an electrical lineman rodeo. So they have events they compete in, kind of like bulldogging or whatever, and they time them climbing poles and all that. So it's a great event. Again, we'll put that on your calendar if you're looking for something to do. But it's a cool program. So.
Randy, I'll race you.
Yeah. Anything else?
We appreciate it.
No,
I do want to say I do appreciate you all starting the lineman program in the state. I've got to see 2 other ones, and they all point to you guys as well. We weren't the first, but it's always tough to be the first one to start a program like that. And so really appreciate you all being willing to be the first to do it. And now, like you said, it has become very popular. You've seen other CareerTech started up, and this is going to be a huge benefit to students. So appreciate your work, and this is a fantastic report. So thank you for what you guys are doing.
Thank you for coming up with your staff to answer questions.
Any more for me?
I would move that we approve the distance education at Northeast Technology Center.
We have We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jones, you mind calling roll for us?
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds? Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is approved. Next on the next management action item, we've got Dr. Lockwood back up for a vote on 2 additional lottery grant awards. And I know, Dr. Lockwood, you just went over this in the last meeting, but with 2 new board members. You mind giving us a little context like you did? Last meeting was great, kind of explaining why we go through this vote, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sir. Our agency's appropriated funds from the lottery in the state of Oklahoma. We divide those funds up. Don't turn off my mic. Anyway, 45% of our lottery funds we allocate for K-12 lottery grants, 45% to technology center lottery grants, 10% to scholarships for CareerTech educators. It's a competitive grant process, and these are K-12 schools we're talking about today, but it's a competitive grant process for them. The Technology Center has a competitive grant and a non-competitive grant piece as well. You had a list last month you had approved. These are 2 schools that were missed, and in fairness, we need to come back to you and admit our error and get them their appropriate funding that they earned via the rubric and scoring that we had done. And that's why they've been pulled out, as agency simply missed them before.
And if I may add, for the new members, with the lottery money for CareerTech, these are actually collected dollars. These are not projected dollars. These are dollars from last year. So whenever we do the lottery grants at CareerTech, we know that money's in the bank. So in the account, I shouldn't say in the bank, but in the account, so.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Make a motion, we approve the 2 additional lottery grants.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Ms. Jones, you mind calling roll?
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda is Ms. Batchelder. We've got a discussion and vote on the CareerTech education budget. I believe you've got this executive summary there, the budget inside your folder.
Yes. Good morning, board members. Yes, you should have a copy of our executive summary for the FY24 budget in your packet. I do want to point out that this is a corrected version from what was emailed to you earlier, and there's 2 small items that I will point out to you as we go through this together. Okay, yay. Okay, that works. First, I want to point out some of the most notable items that you'll find in this year's budget summary. As mentioned earlier, CareerTech Education did receive an increase in our general appropriation. $22,603,636 was our increase, and that is a 16.4% increase over the prior year general appropriation. Next, I have listed some ways that those dollars are being used. $1.4 million of that is for Technology Center Flexible Benefit Allowance. That's a statutory requirement that we provide that to our Technology Center staff. Next is $9,948,597. That comes about from a bill that was passed this session that provides certified salary increases, certified teacher increases at our technology centers. Next, we have $4,750,000. That is to add PK-12 programs. We added 173.5 programs. Those were programs that were approved by our agency but were unfunded due to lack of funding. So this provides the funds to fully operate those programs. We also were able to increase the amount of program assistance that we provide to those programs, to the new programs and as well as the existing programs. They hadn't seen an increase for quite a while. I mean, there were several years of decreases several years back, but now we've been able to get them more current on their program assistance funding. Another thing we were able to provide with that is a one-time equipment grant for those new programs. They're all starting up. They all need some assistance in preparing their classrooms and equipping it with supplies and equipment. So those are one-time grants for those 173 new programs. We were able to add $1.2 million for a expansion at Central Tech of the statewide truck driver training program to meet the demand for CDLs in the state. We needed to add to that. There's a significant demand that we need to meet. Dollars were appropriated for that. Next, $3.5 million went to the Technology Center operational funding formula. That is to help address programs. As mentioned earlier, there are some programs that have a waiting list at our technology centers. This will help those programs be able to meet that demand and not have a waiting list due to capacity. Hopefully that will assist in that. Lastly, of the appropriation, $1,769,000 was for agency operations and support of the program growth. As Mr. Haken mentioned earlier, additional program specialists will be needed to be able to go out to these schools, service those schools. A significant number of school additions or program additions will require additional support from our staff. That is how the $22.6 million has been budgeted. Next, state lottery appropriations went down a little bit, just $118,174, which is a 2.5% decrease from prior year. The next three line items are federal. Our Carl Perkins federal allocation increased by $644,000. That's a grant we received from the U.S. Department of Education. Adult education and family literacy, that allocation increased by $635,000. We also received that grant from U.S. Department of Education. And American Rescue Plan Act, otherwise known as ARPA, we are budgeting $14,110,000 for that, and I'll kind of go more in depth in that in just a few minutes. Next in your packet, you'll see the legislation that provided that $160 million general appropriation, as well as the lottery appropriation, being House Bill 1004. Next slide is a 10-year breakdown of our general and lottery appropriations. Looking at it from 2014 to present. In general appropriation, it's a 19.22% increase over fiscal year 14. So that's very, very welcome for us. We also show a 20.5% increase in lottery over fiscal year 14. On the far right side, you'll see some changes by year for appropriations. So in looking at that, you can see that 16.4% general appropriation increase over fiscal year 23. this slide is just another way of looking at that, so you can see that increase. And this slide is actually, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's from fiscal year 10 to fiscal year 24. And in fiscal year 10, we were at 154,304,000. And now we are with 160,206,000. Again, state lottery appropriation history from fiscal year 10 through fiscal year 24. It stays pretty consistent over time. Here's our agency FTE trend, and this is our state agency. It's not technology centers, it's our state agency. From fiscal year 10 with 337 FTE to a low of 212 last fiscal year, and a slight increase for fiscal year 24. Our funding sources, where do we get our revenue? As you can see, the majority of our revenue comes from our state general appropriation at 75%, followed by federal at almost 15%. ARPA is 5% currently of our budget, followed by lottery appropriation, revolving, and agency special account. To explain what these are, federal grants, obviously Perkins, adult education, family literacy. We have a TANF grant as a subrecipient from DHS. Federal ARPA, those are funds that were awarded to us actually by the legislature. We have 3 different grants that are ARPA. We have a nursing grant, we have a truck driver training grant, and we have a broadband training grant. And I'll go more into those in just a second. Revolving funds, those are our contracts. Those are not federal, they're not state. They're contracts we may have with other entities such as Department of Corrections for our Skill Center training programs. Contracts we may have for testing services that we provide. Contracts we may have for any number of different things, curriculum services or whatever. We have also a print facility and a curriculum facility. They provide curriculum sales and print sales across the state. That's included in our revolving funds. Agency special account, that is a special agreement we have with OMES. We have an actual signed document that allows us to have this fund, and it is to collect registration fees for conferences and then pay the expenses for those conferences from that registration fee. Okay, next slide. So everybody able to read that? Probably not. So let me break it down. First section is the comparison of FY23's projected revenue to FY24's projected revenue. So in looking at FY24, you can see that $160,206,000 for the state general appropriation. You can see $4,531,306 for the lottery appropriation. You can see what we're projecting in revenue for revolving and for federal. And I did go ahead and separate out the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds, because they're just a little bit different than our regular federal funds. And you can see that we have budgeted $11.2 million for that. What that is $6.2 million for truck driver training and $5 million for broadband training. And last fiscal year, about this time, when I brought the FY23 budget, I had an addendum to that budget that included $3,500,000 504,368. That was our nursing. That came very late as we were getting ready for our budget presentation, so it was added as an addendum last year. So you can see that on that FY23 projected revenue side. And you can see we're about budgeting 2.9 million in carryover from that. So we've had a few small claims with that. They're really gearing up fiscal year '24 to probably expend all of that nursing fund. So we have projected to expend 2.9 million of that 3.5 million. Does that make sense? Okay. A total projected revenue of $212,065,212. The next section is a breakdown of the budgeted expenditures. So first section is the pass-through part, the part that we provide to subrecipients or through operational funding formulas. And the next section is operational, which would be agency and skills centers. This particular sheet is all funds, so there's no separation between funding sources when in this. First, you'll see technology center assistance. That $102 million is for the tech center operational funding formula. It also includes that flexible benefit allowance that I mentioned earlier. That actually totals about 28.5 million of that total. It also includes those salary increases of the 9.9 million that came out of this session. It includes certified personnel and support staff personnel salary increases from, I think it was around 2015 when we had those come through. We keep that pure in that funding formula to maintain the integrity of that allocation. So, and that's about 35.4 million of that total tech center operational funding. If you have any questions, please stop me. Feel free to. Customized training. Oh, Randy, Mr. Gilbert.
Talking about salary increases, I was gonna wait till we got through, but the increase in salary that passes through for the technology center employees, certified staff, we've talked for the last couple of years about increasing the pay at the technology, at the home office, for all the program specialists, for all the employees there, to match what the certified teachers have got in the, either in the comprehensive schools or in the technology centers, because we have to keep we have a very wonderful staff, but we have to be able to compensate them at a similar level to what the teachers in the classroom are getting paid.
Yep.
And
You're exactly right.
teachers need to be paid, and they need to be paid more, actually, but also the support staff at the home office needs to.
So what we hope is that, and sorry, Lisa, if I'm talking over, but what we hope is that we are drawing some of the best classroom people to be at the agency so that they lead the state. So Randy's exactly right, that when they get these bumps, then they actually go over the amount that they could make at the state agency in many instances. So that's part of the very first slide that she showed you, agency operations. That's why there's an increase there, is because we're going to look at a process or a fair compensation that may help offset that so that they would be brought up to a level of a teacher in the classroom for those people that you want to bring in. And then some of them are not teachers. Some of them are industry people, that especially in T&I or maybe a different division, federal programs, any of those things may be industry people, so that you could compensate them fairly enough so that you would have quality people leading your state. We have to make sure as other state salaries go up that we can make some sort of compensation. So we will make pay band adjustments, and we will probably bring those to you once we are finalized with everything of what it will look like. But
That's at 1.7.
1.7. So it's adding staff, because we grew, and one thing that I wanted to point out I was going to do at the end, 173 new programs funded this year. That's huge. That's a big number. So when you divide that up over the different program areas, you're going to have some support. And many of those teachers are going to be brand new teachers. So they're going to need extra support. And they're gonna need professional development. There's a lot of things that they're gonna need. If we're gonna maintain the quality that we have to support that. So that's one thing that I'm pretty fond of, is making sure that that support level matches what we're expecting. So that's where those agency operations increase comes from. Yep.
I mean, that's very good that we have that, but, you know, as most of us know, that's long overdue.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
we're good. That was my question about the staff at the agency, so.
Good.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
Yes, good question. Next, as we go through the budgeted expenditures, is customized training services, and that's our biz area. Things like the TIP and the TIG and the customized safety funding formula. That is $5.7 million of that budget line. Next, we have statewide programs, and that's that Central Technology Center Truck Driver Training Program. And you can see the increase there over prior year. Teacher.
For those that don't know, the truck driver training is a totally different thing than we do with most of our programs. It's a statewide program, so that it's housed in one technology center, but it serves the whole state of anyone that needs it. And there's been a huge backlog of those needing CDL training, so we're trying to expand that. That was a legislative intention that several wanted to happen. So we're going to make sure that we can fund that back to a level where it used to be, so we can expand our services across the whole state, not just at Central.
Next, you can see teachers' retirement direct contribution, and that is for our technology centers. We're required to submit that to teachers' retirement. Next is comprehensive school assistance. That's your program assistance for your K-12 programs, your salary supplements for those instructors, and you can see the increase over prior year there for that. Small amount budgeted for high schools that work, dropout recovery programs in our technology centers to provide preventative services for, to prevent dropout. We have youth training projects. We have 3 of those in the state. There's one at Francis Tuttle Autry Technology Center, and we'll be starting one at, I believe it's Metro Technology Center. It's a fiber optic technician program at Metro Tech that we're starting. A little feedback there. We also have a Second Chance Act grant where we will be using Central Technology Center services for truck driver training in particular, and this is a skill centers grant. You can see lottery next on the list. As was indicated earlier, 45% of that is for Technology Center equipment upgrade grants, 45% for K-12, and 10% for CareerTech educator scholarships. And as Mr. Gilbert said earlier, we are spending and budgeting this year prior year funds that we have received. So what we are allocated or appropriated this year, we will spend next year. Next is the Perkins Secondary, Supplemental, and Post-Secondary pass-through funds. This is the Perkins Federal Grant. We're required to sub-award 85% of those funds to schools. It could be colleges, K-12, or technology centers. And that's $17.79 million. TANF, Welfare to Work, that is an agreement we have with Oklahoma DHS. Those programs are in our technology centers. That is $3 million budgeted. Bid Assistance Center is the old name. What we need to become comfortable with saying now is what they're currently being called Apex Accelerator. That doesn't really roll off the tongue, so, but I need to remember to say that, but that is their new title. We have budgeted $768,000 of those in funds, and that's a combination of state and federal funds that support that program. That's a federal grant with the Department of Defense. Adult education, family literacy, we have $9 million budgeted there for subawards to technology centers, K-12s, higher ed, and then we have some other entities, such as the YMCA in Tulsa, and a couple of others. 82.5% of that federal award is required to be passed through to subrecipients. We have $795,000 for TANF adult literacy. That is another agreement with DHS. And then we have ARPA. That $3.5 million on the left for FY23 budgeted expenditures is the nursing program. The 14.110087 on FY24 is a combination of the nursing, the truck driver training, and the broadband. And those are all agreements we have with our technology centers for, they all have submitted for those funds. Their project funding templates have been reviewed. They've been approved and awarded funds and are in the process of expending those. We have through, that funding source goes through December 31 of 2026. We've given our schools till August 1 of 2026 to submit their final claim against those funds. And I anticipate the majority of those funds will be expended probably this fiscal year, maybe a little bit into 25. Next, operational agency, that's program support, grant support, skill centers. That is our school system for training incarcerated individuals. We have agreement with Department of Corrections to operate these training programs within prison walls. And so that skill center's school system is included in that $36.8 million budget. And then we see again that agency special account. It's restricted in what we can use it for, again, per agreement with OMES. Collect registration revenues, basically expend for, use those funds to expend for, in support of that conference or workshop. And we had $345,000 budgeted there. That is the amount listed in our agreement as our maximum with OMES. So you can see we have a total budgeted expenditures of $212,065,212. And you can also see our projected fund balance needs. These are the amounts that we project we'll need to be able to support this budget from prior year carry forward. $5 million for skill centers and agency. Some of this will be the skill centers. Last year, we were appropriated $1.5 million in new general revenue, general appropriation funding for skill centers, and we were appropriated about $1 million for dropout recovery programs. So Dr. Lockwood is in the process of getting some construction at Veneta campus, I believe, at using those funds. So as you know, construction never kind of goes on time. So we're having to carry those funds forward to be able to complete that project in FY24. You can see the lottery of $351,000, revolving commitments, $717,000 we're needing to bring forward to meet our budgeted expenditures for FY24. Federal grants, both Carl Perkins and adult education are 27-month grants. So you have basically, and that's under what's called the Tidings Amendment, so you have basically 27 months to spend your federal funds. So there's carry forward to go from prior year to the next year to be able to do that. And this is primarily those subawards. Schools don't necessarily spend every penny. We carry that forward. We add it to the formula that allocates those funds for the next fiscal year. And then you can see that 2.9 million in nursing ARPA funds that we anticipate expending in FY '24. At the bottom of this sheet is the breakdown by entity of the pass-through funds. So you can see where those funds are going and the type of entities that are receiving them. You can see that there are 3, 4, 5 lines that say to be determined. That is primarily carryover funds that we do not know yet how that will fall out until the year completely closes. We have finalized our FY '23 expenditures. Those will be determined then whether those funds will be subawarded to a technology center, a K-12, higher ed entity, so on. Any questions so far? Okay, next, another little eye test for you, but don't fear. I've broken it down into some larger chunks. This is the detail of what we just went over. And I'll just kind of hit the high points because this is getting into more weeds here. This takes it by funding source. This first section is state funds. These are general and lottery appropriated funds. And it shows how the projected revenue there, and it shows how we have budgeted those, whether it be an operational or a pass-through expenditure. And it again shows that projected fund balance need for each of these funding areas. Student and stakeholder support is the program support for technology centers for our K-12 programs. Our accreditation services, various divisions such as that. Administration, finance, human resources, procurement, communications, and marketing, they all fall under administration. Next two lines are skill centers. And again, that is the instructional support is those instructors that are operating within correction facilities to provide that training. A little bit for curriculum and assessment. Customized training and consulting. Those are on the pass-through side. We have agreements with technology centers to provide training and industry program training for industry growth programs, and that customized and safety funding formula. And that funding formula is actually based on results. So it's based on new and repeat customers. It's based on contact hours, a 3-year history of that. So it's based on performance. You see that truck driver training statewide program again there. You see our state match for the Apex Accelerator federal grant. Next section, state matching on our adult education, family literacy. Comprehensive school assistance again is program assistance salary supplement for our K-12 programs. High schools at work tech center assistance again is that $102 million. You can see the teachers' retirement direct pay. TANF welfare to work, we have a state match on that as well. Then you can see we have a skill centers educational attainment, and we have those partner programs I mentioned earlier. There's 3 of those, the Francis Tuttle, Autry, and soon to be Metro Tech. We also have dropout recovery in that section for educational attainment. Next is our lottery. You can see our award for technology centers, comprehensive schools, and those CareerTech educator scholarships. And you can see fund balance needs for those funds on the right side. Again, any questions, please feel free to stop me. Next, we have revolving. Those are primarily contracts. I want to point out, first of all, one reason that your packet changed from the emailed packet is when you look at ARPA administration, $101,912. That's an individual we've hired to assist us with administering the ARPA federal grants. That was included as an operational expenditure, but the formula was not carried down in that total column, so we've carried that formula down now to show that total. Let's see, we have training programs in our skill centers with contracts. They're funded through contracts with Department of Corrections and Office of Juvenile Affairs. That's the $1,550,000. We have a printing facility. We're looking to expand what our printing facility offers. We're going to do a little bit more marketing of the services they can provide. So we have $1.7 million budgeted there for that, and that's also curriculum distribution. Career readiness, our CRCs, and standards and assessments. Those are agreements we have with different entities, including technology centers and other for testing services, and that's budgeted at $734,000. You'll see indirect cost in there as a revenue source of $497,000. That is the indirect costs that we are able to claim from Carl Perkins, adult education, family literacy. Primarily those two federal grants make up that amount.
I have a question, sorry.
Sure.
On the dropout recovery, the 1.439 million, can you talk a little bit about what that money goes towards with respect to dropout recovery?
Sure. We have agreements with technology centers. Trying to think how many we have now, maybe about 8. I'd say about 8 technology centers. And they work with their partner schools in the area, and students, they're trying to give them some training, the students training to prevent them from dropping out. So at-risk students may come to our facility and receive some training. So it's a prevention program, basically, before they get into becoming a juvenile offender or something of that nature. We're hoping to provide preventative services at the start.
Does that money cover the cost of the program itself, plus the teachers involved and the?
Yes, it's the instructors that are working with these students. That is one budget item that the technology centers cover with this funding. We also have to provide at times some supportive services for those students. Okay. You may have to provide, for example, for them to be able to go to the cafeteria that day, for them to be able to eat a meal ticket, for example.
Okay.
Sure. Good question. That is revolving. Next, we have federal funding sources. You can see at the top is Carl Perkins, funded from U.S. Department of Education. That projected new revenue reflects that $644,000 increase we're receiving this year. And you can see the various ways we're using those funds. Again, 85% of that has to be passed through to our subrecipients. That's $17.7 million. And then we are allowed to claim administrative and leadership costs with that, 5% max on admin and 10% max on leadership. So we have those budgeted in the various areas that are allowed by law. Adult Education and Family Literacy, again, U.S. Department of Education funded federal grant, increase of $635,123 for that federal grant. We're required to subaward 82.5% minimum of that award, and the rest can be used again for administrative costs or leadership activities for that grant. American Rescue Plan Act, I included that here under federal kind of as a separate category. Again, showing the nursing, truck driver training, and broadband line items there, $6.2 million for truck driver training. We have 4 technology centers that are sub-recipients of that award. And we have broadband training. We have 9 technology centers that are sub-awards for that. That's a $5 million award. And nursing, we have 10 technology centers that are sub-recipients of those federal awards. We have next, other federal. Those are some of our smaller awards. Again, the Oklahoma Bid Assistance, or APEX Accelerator, as we call it. Next, we have Second Chance Act. That's a Skill Center federal award. And then we have our 2 TANF programs, which are through contract with Oklahoma DHS. So we have a total general fund budgeted expenditure of $225,679,376. You can once again see that $345,000 budgeted in revenue and expenditure for the agency special account, which we affectionately call the conference account. I think that's it. Questions? I did do a summary sheet. That might be helpful to show you as well, just kind of closing it all in with the projected revenue, the operational expenditures, the pass-through expenditures, just so you can see that all in one little snapshot. What questions can I answer?
Thank you for all your work with putting this together for us.
Sure, happy to.
Very good, very detailed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly, Lisa, I think you blew us away with your thorough presentation there. I want to ask you, you mentioned the TANF, and thank you very much. I appreciate, you started general with the overall, how much money was going where, and that breakdown was very, very helpful. You mentioned the TANF grants, just briefly, though you said CareerTech subrecipient from DHS, correct?
Correct.
So when that comes in, are those primarily, and I imagine it's probably all of the above, but are those typically housed in a CareerTech or in a K-12 system, or?
A technology center.
So those usually in the technology
Yes,
center, okay.
our technology centers, yes.
And are there any other, is that probably the only one that you're a sub-recipient of from DHS, or was there any other?
Right, that is it, the 2 TANF contracts we have.
Okay, excellent.
Sure. Good questions, anything else? With that, I would ask for a vote.
And so the vote would be to approve this budget as laid out through the legislature that we would then be approving for the agency.
Correct. You would be approving what she has
What I
presented as our operational budget for the year '24.
Yes.
So moved.
We've got a motion and a second. You mind calling roll, Ms. Jones?
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. And I do want to acknowledge the great job by your staff director to put that together, because the unique funding streams, it's really important for the board to see all of that in one spot, to see what all CareerTech is working with, and frankly, what an effective job they have done to keep all of those funding mechanisms going, continue to grow their programs, and also make sure that we have the understanding of what all they are doing and getting federal dollars, being subrecipients of federal dollars, state dollars. So really appreciate the work that was done to really give us a thorough explanation of the operational budget there. Director, I'll turn it over to you. You've got a proposed executive session here on the agenda if you want to
Yeah,
give us
so
information.
I would propose that we go into executive session, and we can have a motion and a vote on that here in a minute so that we can talk about employment. You guys know that anything above a pay band 14 we discuss, and then any terminations are discussed as well. So that's why we have that agenda item there.
So moved.
We've got a motion and a second. Can you call roll for us, Ms. Jones?
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes.
And I would like to request Glenn to be in with us as well.
There you go. Glenn, do we need to make a motion to go back into, okay. Do we have a motion to enter? Ms. Jones, you mind calling roll for us to come out of executive session?
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert? Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Do we, oh, go ahead.
We had entertained motions.
We'll make a motion to terminate Mr. Robert Holt effective end of day, June 15th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you call roll, Ms. Jones?
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes.
On your next item, if there is a motion by the board, I would note that the effective date should be 6/19 of '23 as presented.
I would move that we hire Renee Reed for the TNI program manager with an effective date of June
19th.
19th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. You mind calling roll, Ms. Jones?
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Motion passes. I see nothing else on the agenda. If we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. You mind calling roll one more time, Ms. Jones?
Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Hillary?
Yes.
Ms. Hanning?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Dillingham?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for attending today.
Nice to meet you. Sounds like you've been doing this for a while.
CareerTech's a great thing.
It's a wonderful, wonderful. I'll find it and bring it to the next one.
It's going to be a cool